Hi, welcome back. My name is still Mariah. If you're watching another one of my videos, thanks. I really appreciate it. I thought something interesting to talk about could be how you keep your snakes. Essentially, what do you keep a snake in? For people who might be interested in a snake but then see how many options there are, that can be kind of overwhelming. I know it was for me. And I ended up doing a lot of research before I landed on what I prefer. And I know it can be controversial, but I actually prefer keeping my snakes in tubs. And here's why. Humidity is a breeze when they're in a tub. It creates a safer feeling environment for them because it's relatively enclosed. It helps them to feel relaxed because of that feeling like their entire home is a hiding spot. It makes them feel a lot more comfortable. And then when I do go in to do maintenance, take care of them, then they don't necessarily feel as blindsided because they feel the tub move, and that can prepare them, she's coming to get me. So I actually prefer tubs, but I thought it'd be interesting to kind of go over the differences in enclosures because not all species will thrive in a tub setup. Towards the end, I'll show you what tubs I'm using. I have a variety of sizes since my snakes are a variety of sizes. But just to get started, one of the most popular enclosures people will see advertised are the glass or aquarium enclosures. I actually have one right back there that is currently where Oliver is living. I'd love to upgrade him into a PVC or a melamine, sorry, I don't know. I've only read the word, I haven't heard it. So I'd love to upgrade him in the future so that the humidity stays higher, but this is what I had on hand. He was a rescue, so we're working on it. A big plus with the glass enclosures is the visibility. So with creatures that are not as shy, it's really fun to be able to interact and watch them and decorate their enclosures. So with Oliver, because he is a skink and a little bit higher need when it comes to the emotional attention kind of side, he enjoys the glass enclosure because he can watch me and see me. It also is nice because I know when he wants to come out based on what he's doing. If he's digging around or climbing, I'm leaving him alone. But there are times where he'll come right up to the glass and just stare at me, and he wants to come out, so I take him out. There's also a lot of nice availability when it comes to just the aesthetic. If you really love seeing your creatures, that can be really cool. So if you have a small collection of reptiles, 1 or 2, maybe 3, they are expensive to get the aquariums, but it can be really worth it if it's a part of the aesthetic of your home and they're animals that enjoy the stimulation of outside sources. I did mention PVC, melamine, wood enclosures, homemade enclosures. Lots of people will do furniture conversion enclosures, which I think are really cool as well. That's another option. Those can be really expensive. However, they can be really cool too because they do a good job with the humidity. One thing to consider is size. With those kind of enclosures, they typically range a fair amount. For larger snakes like boas, it can be kind of tricky to find things that are appropriate sizing. Not impossible, but a little tricky, especially if you have any kind of budget you're trying to stay within. However, I do think handmade, homemade options, if you will do your research and you know what elements have to be required, such as how are you going to be doing the heating, what is your waterproofing going to look like, those can be great options as well. I've made my fair share of handmade, homemade furniture conversion enclosures in the past. The one thing I will say is even if you're making it yourself, it can still end up being relatively expensive if you're getting all of the correct information, the correct materials, honestly. It can still be pretty pricey. And that kind of leads me to the last 2 most popular when it comes to snakes. There's rack systems, which I don't think, there's a lot of controversy there. I don't think a rack system is inherently inhumane or inappropriate. I think there are points though where just because the snake isn't a high needs stimulation animal typically, does not mean that the stimulation isn't still helpful or engaging for them. Something I'm really fortunate is that all of my snakes are handleable. They are good interactive species as far as boas being smart enough to recognize that they can enjoy being out of their cage with me. Not all species are like that, so for a display animal, an aquarium might be great where you never really handle them unless needed because that's not in their comfort zone. With a rack system though, the issue people run into is they're too small. They're not giving the animal enough space to stretch, to move around, to have any of their natural instinct to just shuffle about. I mean, you would not love being stuck in a tiny space. That can be a claustrophobic response. And sometimes I think snakes in rack systems that are not appropriately sized can have similar reactions where they're very defensive, very concerned because the space is so small and there's nothing in there. They don't feel safe. And so of course they're going to have a reaction when you reach in. They're already on the defense. It's an uphill battle. I do think there are examples though of rack systems where the sizing is appropriate and there's enrichment that aren't terrible. I think that that can absolutely work. It just depends on how you're enriching their life. Now, I prefer tubs outside of the rack system so that everybody kind of is on their own separate stage. I actually will get a picture and video of it in a moment, but I have a rack that is basically like a garage storage rack, and I have my heat mats on the bottom and then I have my tubs in there. For me, that works really well. The tubs are technically see-through, but with the humidity, I'm not seeing through unless something is happening on the edge. My snakes love that feature. It feels super safe to them. It's also easy to keep up on the humidity for these tropical animals. Not tropical necessarily, excuse me, but for these animals that need the humidity, which my boas do, they need that humidity so that they can be healthy for their sheds, for their hydration, all of it. With the tub setups, I also make sure to include a hide and some fake plants. Part of why I do that is just for a little bit of enrichment with that, but also so that when they need to shed, when they're feeling restless, they have something to interact with. It's not just them and a water bowl. That can be just boring. That can be a little boring. Keep in mind, my boa will find a spot. They won't move until I check on them again sometimes. However, there are other times where I'll see that they're going around their cage, hanging out, and I know to take them out. But in the meantime, I can at least be rest assured that they weren't bored senseless the entire time that they were in their home. Something else to consider with the tub setup is I actually take my animals out morning and night. And I say that loosely. If they want to come out, I take them out and I handle them for as long as they seem to be happy. If they don't want to come out, I don't force them, but I will check their water, check to make sure no one went to the bathroom, make sure that their humidity is still on point, that kind of stuff. So with the fact that I'm checking on my animals twice a day, handling them sometimes twice a day if they're in the mood, a tub setup for me works really well. They don't need a crazy home to be happy. They do need, though, their needs to be met. And I feel like I can meet those needs with the interaction and the safety that I provide them through the tub. What I'm gonna do now is I'll get some footage of my tub setup and the sizes that I'm using with my different snakes. I am not an expert. I've done a lot of research on what works for me. I've done a lot of research on what would make my animals feel safe and take care of their needs. If you have a different opinion, that is okay. If I'm doing something that you disagree with, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. But please keep in mind, I've done a lot of research as to what will help my snakes feel safest, and that is what I am doing. I am doing my best. So, without further ado, I'll give you a little bit of a rundown of what I do with my animals, and maybe that'll be something that helps a snake feel more attainable to you in the future. If you can't have a huge melamine enclosure in your home because of cost, because of size, whatever it is, maybe a tub would be a great resource for the species you're looking at. I know with my boas, they are thriving. So let me get into that. This is the rack that I use to hold all my tubs. You'll notice I keep a calendar with my tubs to make sure to track all information. I also will use binder clips on longer stretches to make sure that there's no escape artists at the weaker points of the tubs. So far, no one's gotten out, which has been lovely. I have different sizes for all of my different snakes, and you'll see that bottom one is empty still. That is for Calamari, who has not yet arrived, but should shortly. Underneath my tubs, I do have heat mats placed strategically to make sure that I have a heat gradient for all of the snakes. For size reference, Pesto is about 4 feet, and this tub provides her plenty of space. You'll see there are holes drilled in the sides so that she has airflow, and it also helps to keep the humidity high for her. You'll notice that I have a hide that has some rough texture, some fake leaves in there, and I also like to use cocoa husk so that there is something for her to dig around in. Her water is clean, there is just dirt underneath the see-through container. All right, that is a brief overview of how I keep my snakes. My snakes are very healthy, very well tempered, very well taken care of. I don't have any issues with shedding, eating, temperament, and I find a lot of success with the tubs, at least for my species that I keep specifically. Maybe if you're interested in a boa in the future, I think they're wonderful beginner snakes, and I could make a whole video talking about why as well. However, I think that a tub is a really accessible way for more people to enjoy these beautiful animals. So let me know what you think. If you have any different opinions, I'd love to hear them as well. Just please be respectful. Like I said, I've put a lot of energy and love into making sure my animals are taken care of, and I'm very confident that their needs are met. Either way, thank you for watching another one of my videos. I appreciate you coming back, and I will see you again.